Markets with David Modell.
Welcome to Looking at the Markets with David Modell. Today my special guest is Mr. Frank Holmes. Mr. Holmes is the chairman of Hive Blockchain Technologies, CEO and CIO of U.S. Global Investors, and author of the Frank Talk CEO blog. Wow, that's a lot. So let's talk to Mr. Frank Holmes. Hello, sir. How are we doing today?
Outstanding, my friend, outstanding. I'm also the author of a book called The Gold Watcher. So I'm known for the world of gold and launching many new, today, substantial gold companies.
Absolutely. You've done so many amazing things. And of course, we're going to put a link in the description below this video to the Frank Talk blog. And so people definitely want to click on that. I've got so much to ask you today about cryptocurrencies, the markets. So let's go ahead and get started with the first question. Let's start at the beginning. If you could, Mr. Holmes, tell me about your background, please.
Well, I'm originally from Canada. I live in Texas, so I like to say I'm a Texcan. Y'all come back A. And with that, I've been known for the world of gold. I have top performing gold funds. I have a great team. And I have Eastern European to China funds to tax-free funds. So I have a whole collection, but our real focus has been in the mining sector and leaders in the funding and the creation of new mining ventures.
Absolutely. Now, how did you get into the cryptocurrency space?
Well, it was the inspiration from my sons, in particular one, and then my godson, that was urging me to get into this space. And I was out trying to launch an ETF. I'd launched one on Jets ETF listed in New York, and I'd launched one called Go AU, Go Gold, the New York Stock Exchange, which are basically quant digital mathematical models to picking stocks in a portfolio. And when in that journey, I was gathering all this knowledge. And I was with the New York Stock Exchange, and they told me that they had invested in Coinbase. And then I found out that USAA, which is just up the street in San Antonio from our offices, they had also invested in Coinbase in 2015 at a $75 million round, which this past week was valued at $8 billion. So it was this sort of journey this time last year of trying to launch a ETF in the digital currency space when I discovered that the regulators just were not going to let it happen. They could not afford the embarrassment of a hacker getting paid in Bitcoins and then that showing up in the New York Stock Exchange in ETF. So I had this knowledge, and my friend Frank Schuster had called me, and he said his young guns had this great idea, and they had a relationship with Genesis Mining, and I had known a bit about Genesis Mining, enough to say this is a serious company, and I started going down that path of looking at the creation of Hive.
Yeah. Now, what I wanted to know, though, is, in your opinion, is Bitcoin in competition with gold?
You know, that's a big question you get asked all the time. But what's interesting is that many of the early adopters to Bitcoin were gold bug investors because they loved two things. It was decentralized, and it was capped at 21 million coins. And so they really didn't sell their gold to go buy Bitcoin. They diversified. But what has happened is that the ICO market, the initial coin offerings, has really been a place where speculative money, in particular millennial money, has gone. Rather than exploration companies or new biotechnology companies, the speculative capital has gone into ICOs. And it's interesting because the number last year was like 1,000 new ICOs were created, and something like $5 billion of speculative money went into that. And in my research, the thesis was that it takes you 5 minutes to open an account at Coinbase. And millennials have Tinder, and they're so quick to use yes, no, and they're not going to wait 3 to 5 days to open a brokerage account. So their idea of buying speculating on a new venture is gone into this crypto world.
Yeah. Now, what do you think Warren Buffett and Alan Greenspan are getting wrong about Bitcoin?
Well, it's, for me, it's like listening to Frank Schuster was listening to his young guns, and I was listening to my millennial godson and sons, and you have to have this idea and this concept of understanding that they have new forms of trust, such as at the beginning I didn't trust Uber, and now it's the biggest taxi company in the world without owning any taxi cabs. Airbnb, the biggest hoteler in the world and doesn't own any hotels. A new form of trust. And this digital money is a new form of trust. And I think that that's what the hard part for them to basically embrace, this sort of swing into the speculative money. They're not real big speculators. They usually buy a company after it's matured, just like now Buffett's buying Apple after it's had a spectacular run and move. It's this concept of new values. And what's really important for listeners is that the internet was basically opened up by email, and blockchain is being opened up by Bitcoin and then Ethereum. And whereas emails was a transfer of information, Bitcoin shows that you can transfer value. And the same thing happens with Ethereum. So we're going to see huge transformations in the movement of securities, the settlements, no illegal shorting, settlements on time. It's been estimated the crisis of 2008 would have been much, much less had you had everything on a blockchain, Ethereum format, because things would have settled on time.
Got it. Now, did the peak in Bitcoin come about because of the launch of the CME futures contracts? I mean, did it legitimize Bitcoin as a financial asset, or did it just put a cap on Bitcoin?
Two great questions. Very, very good questions, David, because they're asked so often. And clearly, if you look at charts, you would say that the peak was the CME launching a futures market where people could knock down the price. But what's interesting is that gold is leveraged 10 to 1, 20 to 1. The Bitcoin futures contract, there's no leverage. It's just a mechanism for people that do not want to go into Coinbase to try to borrow to short, that they could turn around to suppress it. So I think that there's no doubt that it could act as a mechanism to suppress the price of Bitcoin. But I'm sure that's short-lived. But I do think it legitimizes it. The fact that you have a futures market and we're seeing this evolution take place. And what's interesting is that most of the media and the news in the fourth quarter of 2017 was exceedingly bullish on Bitcoin. And there was pronouncements everywhere. And once we got into the second week of January, and all of a sudden there was announcements taking place of meetings that are going to take place with the Senate, want to know more about Bitcoin and the risks of these ICOs and these cryptocurrencies. Then we had a big sell-off, and all the news turned negative. And then after the meeting, there was a rally, and then there was a meeting with Congress, more negative news, and it sold off again. And then we had this big, big rally until it sold off to the final trough, where it was the mid-April for tax filing, when the thought process was that many people had to sell Bitcoins to pay taxes. And so that has led to a substantial rally, in particular for Ethereum.
Fascinating. Now, I know that you launched Hive blockchain technology in September of 2017. And for people who want to investigate Hive, I recommend they go to hiveblockchain.com, and that link is in the description below this video. And Hive blockchain technology is tradable. On the Toronto Stock Exchange, it is HIVE, Hive, easy to remember. And on the United States OTC markets, it is HVBTF. Now, since launching Hive back in September, how are your growth plans evolving?
Well, they're right on skid. In a very volatile market, I'm really happy that the partnership with Genesis Mining, David, has been very significant. Genesis Mining is the largest private company that allows people to go and mine these currencies in a pooling arrangement and use their cloud, use their machines that are in Iceland and Sweden, in other cool green area, what they like to call green energy jurisdictions. They've an incredible growth. The CEO is a brilliant 28-year-old mathematician, just like Michael Dell and Bill Gates. They never finished university. He finished university math in grade 10. There's a great TED talk on Marco Strang that I highly recommend people watch to get a better understanding of these young crypto kids. He's very humble. He works at 7-Eleven, 9, just all the time. And he built this company that was growing at 100,000 customers a day. And just like Coinbase was growing at 100,000 customers a day. So he has something like 2 million subscribers that pay him in advance up to 2 years to be able to mine Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other coins that they have available in their service. So he's a strategic partner. And in the original launching of this, he was 30% of Hive blockchain technology. That is Genesis Mining and the partners, which is a private company out of Germany. And so actually Hong Kong is their jurisdiction, but the intellectual capital are German mathematicians. And so with that, having them a strategic relationship, it's like driving a Porsche. When you go and visit their facilities, it's like a BMW, Mercedes, Porsche engineering. And having them to be able to go due diligence on other operations and to really truly get down to the nitty gritty of running a highly efficient system, they're the best that I could think of to have a strategic partner with. And so they became the partnership, and we've been right on skid because these guys are just first class. They're like Navy SEALs, how they go and execute in any program that they've made advancements with. So we've gone from initially starting at basically consuming 2.5 megawatts of power to 24 megawatts, right on skid. That's a 10-fold increase. And by September, we should be up to close to 45 megawatts consuming. And what does that mean? It means that we're mining many, many more coins. And then by September, we'll be mining Bitcoin. Right now, it's predominantly Ethereum and other coins that are basically on that protocol. And so we've been able to tremendous scale. We've increased basically between launching in 12 months from September 2017, a 20-fold increase in the consumption of energy to mine these coins.
Yeah, that's huge. And I am excited about the partnership between Hive and Genesis Mining. I think that's super essential. If people really want to get a corporate overview of Hive, of the company, which their legal team has fully approved this report, and this is for serious accredited investors, you're going to want to go to pureblockchainwealth.com/block. And that link is right below this video in the description. That's pureblockchainwealth.com/block. Download that report. It's free. And, get that overview of the company. Learn all about it. All right. So wanted to get back into a general question. In your opinion, how volatile are the cryptocurrencies compared to, let's say, the price of gold?
I write it so often as 40,000 readers in 180 countries. Just think of Genesis Mining as 2 million customers in something like 200 countries. And in that process of going down that journey, I was just blown away. When we look at the stock market, the daily volatility of the stock market is plus or minus 1%, 70% of the time. And gold, interesting enough, is also 1%, 70% of the time. So it's nothing for the gold or the stock market to go up or down 1%. Gold stocks, on the other hand, go 2 to 3%. Biotechnology, 2 to 3%. Now, let's talk about Bitcoin and Ethereum. We're talking about plus or minus 6% daily. We're talking about over 10-day ranges of 18 to 22%. It's 70% of the time that's volatility. So that's a very, very volatile. And that's something that you need to have speculative investors really appreciate. And very conservative investors, this is not a space for you because it's just so volatile, even though it's a tremendous growth sector. I think the other part, dovetailing back into the previous question, is that Hive blockchain is the first industrial scale mining company in the world mining these virgin coins. And what's happened with that is that immediately something like 50 new companies have been launched in Canada on the backbone of the success of Hive blockchain technology. And what we're seeing is that many of these companies really don't have an appreciation of Genesis Mining, the technology, the resources of having these incredible data centers, buying some processors and ASICs for Bitcoin, or data cards, GPU cards for Ethereum, really it doesn't give you the scale that's necessary to raise money for a public company. So we've been proud to have this relationship, and we are the first, and we continue to show those good results from mining these with Genesis.
Yeah. Now, what are your growth plans for the next 6 months?
Well, the game plan was to go from basically on the pro forma $1 million a month to $1 million a week. And right now, by September, now it's subject to several things. First of all, what is Bitcoin today? What is Ethereum prices today and the other currencies that we mine? And if we did a projection, a pro forma with that, then it's estimated that it could be close to $10 million a month in revenue. That's 120 million run rate by September, and we would be making $5 million. Back when Ethereum was trading at Bitcoin was at $19,000, Ethereum was $1,200. The numbers were greater, much greater, like pushing $300 million. So this space is very, very volatile. What's good about Hive is that we have high profit margins. We have a special service master's agreement with Genesis Mining. So we really look like a royalty company, a gold mining royalty company like a Franco-Nevada, that we have only a handful of employees. We've outsourced the rest, and so therefore we have big revenue per employee and very rich profit margins.
Gotcha. So if we can shift over to the equities markets for a moment, what do you think, Mr. Holmes, about the overall stock market?
Well, the stock market started to slow down with the run up because of the tax cuts, and markets always run up on anticipating. But a real challenge has been rising interest rates in the U.S. The 10-year hitting 3%. Really started to slow down and created volatility. And in our analysis, and what we saw was that what the dividend yield is so when the dividend yield of the S&P 500 was greater than 5-year government money, 2-year government money, treasury bills, then all of a sudden the stock market is a great place. But as soon as we started seeing the 5-year yield go above the S&P dividend, and then the 2-year government bond earlier this year, when it went above the S&P dividend yield, it becomes competition. So money immediately stops going into the stock market, and it's going to go where it's guaranteed for the next 2 years to get this type of return versus the dividend growth. And that's what really accelerated the VIX ratio and the VIX index, the volatility index. So I think that the market's trying to get an idea that will rates peak here. So I think we're going to get another rate rise, but I think we may get a peak this summer in the rising of rates, because we saw what's called PMI, Global Purchasing Manufacturers Index. It's peaked now. It's sort of gone sideways. It had an incredible rally, which is good for global economic growth, but it seems to have slowed down. And this could be it's because of 6 months anticipating. This is usually a good precursor for rates to slow down and rising.
Interesting. I'll definitely be watching for the yields as well as the equities markets. I'll be looking for that for sure. Now, going back to Hive, blockchain technologies, do you have large institutional shareholders?
Well, what we did was really remarkable in the first quarter of launching. In the last quarter of 2017, from September to December, we were so fortunate and blessed that people believed in our vision. And we raised money several times, and we tapped the capital markets for over $200 million. And that gave us the capacity to have this tremendous future growth until September, this great build-out that we're experiencing right now. And so we had Fidelity come in, and we had something like 15 institutional investors come in and take a position in Hive blockchain technology. And we've been able to demonstrate it's liquid. It's a very liquid stock. And in the first quarter, we demonstrated a 36% return on our invested capital. And so we are still growing. We've just announced again this quarter that we'll experience another, level of growth in the next quarter. And then by September, we should have had a really tremendous industrial scale, the biggest in the world mining company.
Very nice. And do you think that mining coins, which have no transactional history, is an advantage for Hive?
It's a great question, because that was part of my journey of trying to launch an ETF in this space and recognizing that the regulators, as I mentioned earlier, were concerned of a corrupt coin from a hacker was showing up in an ETF. And when I found out that we would be mining these virgin coins, these newly minted coins, which are pure, therefore I discovered that they had greater value. And so, yes, so we don't have an AML risk. We don't have know your client risk. So it makes it so much safer as a product. And what we've been doing is in the first quarter is basically stockpiling all of our coins. And now we've come up with a strategy of selling 10% on the volatility of the coins so that we have this demonstrating this cash flow, and we may sell a little bit more. But we wanted to have a big block of particularly Ethereum, because if they go in position to go from proof of work to proof of stake, that we can turn around and post up, as they call it, a big block of inventory of these coins. So we're positioning ourselves for other aspects of growth, because it's very, very fast how it's changing the landscape of digital mining for money.
Now, can you tell me about a new acquisition, which I've heard about, and that's in Norway? What can you tell me about that?
Well, I believe there's just a first mover advantage. We were first to go public in the space and have industrial scale in the space, but it's also data centers in safe jurisdictions and green energy, recycle energy. And so the Norway gives us this huge platform to be able to grow to 100 megawatts to 200 megawatts. And looking around the world, the whole growth in artificial intelligence, you're going to need these data centers, and they like GPU cards. Guess what? Our GPU cards are used for mining Ethereum and other related coins that use the protocol. And you're going to need it for artificial intelligence. So we have much more longevity with the value of the GPU card. And so this gives us position that I think that people are going to want to have to come to get cheap electricity in these jurisdictions. And we're seeing so much competition, and we're really happy that we've got this growth. There's lots of blue sky for growth.
Yeah. And once again, if people want to learn about these developments, about the growth potential of Hive, there is a free corporate overview of the company, which the legal team has approved over at Hive. And this is for any serious accredited investor or potential accredited investor. And this is at pureblockchainwealth.com/block. That's /block. The link is in the description below this video. Go ahead and click on that and download that free corporate overview. Really learn into and dive into Hive. Okay, so I now just wanted to end off with a more general question about cryptocurrencies. There have been 3 big sell-offs in the cryptocurrency markets. Do you expect that another one could happen soon?
Well, I do think that the global framework of looking at the crypto world and digital money, probably the most advanced that I would think of would be the UK. The Bank of England has published many papers, etc. But on the backdrop of that, the G20 finance ministers, which really function independently, they're like a cartel, like OPEC functions, and they're really truly consumed with synchronized global tax and regulation. And this growth in cryptocurrencies has made them alarmed, because many of these countries made announcements of trying to have their own cryptocurrency. So what's expected is that in mid-July, they'll come out with a basic blueprint of how they're looking at the G20 countries, looking at this growth in digital money. So I think that's sort of fearfulness that always takes place, because we believe at US Global that government policies are a precursor to change, and one should be able to understand what their thoughts are, and that could create that other sell-off, which could be an opportunity. But I think that you're seeing more companies come into it. You're seeing the valuations that every day that Coinbase is growing. In Canada, it's Einstein continues to grow, where people go and open an account to be able to buy these coins. And you're seeing companies like Goldman Sachs get into trading them. There's more legitimacy of looking at the opportunities for growth in this space. So even though the Charlie Mungers and the Warren Buffetts and the Greenspans are skeptical, I think that the fact that we're seeing more movement of growth going into this space very cautiously, but it's very positive. Seeing the positive news like North Korea with South Korea, the geopolitics is all of a sudden changing. That's all positive. Then South Korea has come out with an announcement they want to put all their healthcare on blockchain. We're going to see this evolve. It's a non-linear line, but it's very positive for us.
Sounds positive. And the way I see it is that in this wild, gyrating cryptocurrency market, Hive remains strong, steady, and yet poised for growth. All the factors that you mentioned can contribute to massive potential growth for Hive blockchain technologies. And once again, it is tradable on the TSX Venture Exchange. It is HIVE, Hive. On the OTC markets in the United States, HVBTF is the ticker symbol. I recommend, I recommend people check out the website. That link is in the description below the video, hiveblockchain.com. And also, while you're at it, please check out Mr. Holmes's Frank Talk CEO blog. That is on usfunds.com, and that link is in the description below this video. Frank Holmes, the Bulldog himself, is there anything you wanted to mention that I didn't ask about or that you just want to tell my audience?
Well, I just think that for your listeners that recognize that Hive is very volatile because the underlying currencies are volatile. And so you just have to be really sensitive over that volatility and recognize it's a very young, emergent industry. And so therefore it always has its risks in addition to its opportunities. But we are positioned for growth. Any run up in these currencies, we have tremendous optionality and leverage with them.
Yeah. And I'll be watching Hive. I'll be watching your blog. And we're just going to see what happens in the markets. And at Looking at the Markets, we're always seeking out opportunities in this wild market, in the cryptocurrencies markets, in the equities markets. How can we play it in a way that has potential for growth without having to ride the volatility, ride those huge peaks and those valleys? Yes, anything is possible, but for accredited investors, this is a huge opportunity, in my opinion. Mr. Frank Holmes, thank you so much. We'll be watching, we'll be listening, and we hope to have you back soon on Looking at the Markets.
Thank you, David.